Hello, it's time once again for VLGA Connect, our weekly look at news from around the Victorian local governance sector with special guests discussing current issues of interest. It's all brought to you by Hunt and Hunt Lawyers, our terrific sponsors. Coming up today, I'm going to catch up with Sophie Price, who is the Mayor of Indigo Shire Council in northeast Victoria. She'll tell us how that region is recovering from recent tragic events and give us an update on the ongoing fight for better hospital and health services in the region. And later, Tony Raunic is back for an update on legal and governance issues, including a new arbiter decision that has led to the suspension of a Surf Coast Shire councillor for 1 month. That's all ahead on this week's edition of the program. But first, let's check in for the latest in Connect headlines. Surf Coast Shire Council will be short one councillor for the next month following an internal arbitration process leading to the suspension of Councillor Paul Barker for misconduct. The suspension follows incidents including a controversial Facebook post where Councillor Barker publicly questioned official attendance figures at a truth-telling event and questioned the council's honesty and integrity. And Surf Coast Shire Councillor Rebecca Burke has resigned this week with immediate effect. Council CEO Robin Seymour issued a statement announcing the resignation and advising that the VEC will conduct a countback process to determine a new councillor for the Torquay ward. The Victorian Government has announced the appointment of Cathy Henderson as the new Chief Executive Officer of WorkSafe Victoria. Ms Henderson has been the CEO of Marybeck City Council since 2019. She'll finish up at Marybeck on the 24th of October before taking up her new position. The new permanent CEO of Baw Shire Council has been revealed after 3 interims and some 10 months since Mark Dupay resigned the position in November last year. Tilla Bouden, a senior executive with experience at Greater Dandenong, Yarra Ranges and Bayside councils, will take up the role on the 17th of November. Operation Sandon finally reached a courtroom this week with former City of Casey Mayor Sam Aziz and property developer John Woodman at the centre of allegations involving alleged corrupt payments. The pair faced Melbourne Magistrates Court on Thursday via video link on charges that come 7 years after IBAC began its investigations. Hindmarsh Shire Council has reported an error in its rate cap calculation, described as a minor non-compliance. It's resulted in an excess collection of $3,949 across the entire rate base, equivalent to less than $1 per property. The Mayor, Ron Ismay, said the council was taking the error very seriously and prioritising correcting the error through a proportionate decrease in rates collected for the following year. And Kingston Council has been forced to reissue more than 3,000 rates notices after undercharging property owners. That problem arose due to a miscalculation of the new state government emergency services and volunteers fund and primarily affects commercial, industrial, vacant land and primary production properties. A 3-month trial of incontinence product disposal bins in Gannawarra Shire has concluded with mixed results. The council installed special bins at 9 accessible toilet locations across the Shire, but found widespread misuse of the facilities. And Mayor Garner Smith said increased community demand, improved disposal behaviours and additional funding would be necessary before a Shire-wide implementation could be considered. And the City of Greater Geelong is showing its colours this week as the Geelong Football Club vies for its 11th AFL-VFL premiership and its second in 4 years. Mayor Stretch Contell said the council is rolling out the blue and white everywhere across the city. There will be billboards and banners at various locations, Go Cats projection lighting at City Hall and a live site set up at Eastern Beach on game day. That's the latest in Connect News headlines here on VLGA Connect. Next up on the program, I'm pleased to check in with the Mayor of Indigo Shire Council in northeast Victoria, Councillor Sophie Price. Hello, Sophie. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Chris.
Thanks for coming on the program. We thought it would be timely to catch up on some current issues. Your area of the state has been in the news, not for the best of reasons in recent times. And I know that whole Pulpunka shooting incident has cast a pall over the region. How are things right at this point in time?
Yeah, our neighbours at Alpine Shire have been really hurting. Their communities have been quite jarred by this shooting. I know they're working hard and showing a lot of community leadership in terms of bringing their community back together. it's really been a blemish on their beautiful community. We've also seen, as a neighbouring shire at Indigo, the impacts on tourism straight away. Everyone keeps talking about from the Hume out to Alpine has seen those effects almost immediately. And so we're in discussions with Alpine and also with our federal MP and the state MPs as well to say, how are we going to deal with this? Is it declared a natural disaster? Is there some sort of disaster recovery classification that should be applied to this area for an instance like this? Thus far, that hasn't been applied at a federal level, but obviously we've seen state government step in with some relief funding for Alpine Shire, which we really welcome for them because they are hurting and so is their community. It's been a terrible incident and it's certainly rippled out to all of the neighbouring communities as well.
Yeah, people probably don't think about the impact that those travel warnings might have had, for example, because people are going to obviously err on the side of caution. They've been lifted now as we record this, as I understand it.
Yeah, they have been. But obviously, it's a confidence thing now for
Yeah.
people to travel to those areas. It just in my own individual instance, my daughter was supposed to go to school camp out there. There's a beautiful spot for a school camp, and that has been postponed. And I can hear from the school that they're not sure that they'll have the confidence until there's been some sort of resolution with this situation. So that's our role now, and we've been putting that in our weekly update to say for our local communities, get in there and support our neighbours because they're hurting, but they still have the beautiful product. It's a great time of year to be up there. It is really safe. It is absolutely safe to go up there and visit, and they welcome all of that visitation, and so we're trying to do our part there.
Given that the search is still ongoing, no resolution there, are people still on alert, being very vigilant? What does it actually feel like to be living in that part of the world right now with this search ongoing?
I think that certainly our neighbouring community has gotten used to it. I
Mm,
wouldn't try to speak for Paul Punker or Bright because I'm sure that they feel like they're very much in the thick of it. I
mm.
mean, a heavy police presence in your town is certainly of note, but absolutely, these communities know that they're going to have to live with this for however long that takes now. So they are trying to return to some normalcy. And it was like that the other day when we went up there for our tri-council meeting with Alpine, Towong and Indigo. We were very warmly received by the community and they were living their day-to-day lives.
Yeah. The state government's put some money out there to try and encourage people back and to support businesses that have been impacted. I know you welcomed that. Does it go far enough in your view?
No, it really doesn't. And that's why we're looking to the federal government for that declaration, because we think that that is a more appropriate declaration to be made. It obviously then triggers a whole raft of funding. So we really welcome that from the state government. But as long as this goes on for, the impact is going to be more severe and more widespread, and we'll need to continue discussions with the state and federal government about that. And I know certainly Sarah Nicholas and Will Jeremy from Alpine Shire are having those discussions ongoing.
When these sort of things occur, one of the upsides is the way the local government sector and communities come together, isn't it? You've mentioned three councils working together there. I imagine there's been support from even further afield, though.
Oh, absolutely. At the most recent meeting, we have a local government roundtable meeting with our federal MP, Helen Haynes, and Sarah Nicholas and Will Jeremy from Alpine were both so overwhelmed with gratitude for the region and the reaching out of support from the local government community. We've got some great regional advocacy happening at the moment, which means that we are a very tight knit region. And they certainly said that they felt those arms be wrapped around them and their community. And they said, stay with us, please, because we're not at the end of this journey yet. We're only at the beginning and we're going to need a lot of help.
All right, you've touched on advocacy there. Let's move on to some longer term issues. Firstly, any update on the hospital issue that you and I think about 13, we've talked about this before, 13 councils have been strongly pushing for the Albury Wodonga region?
There's always updates on this, Chris. This
Yeah.
issue is not going away. The Albury-Wodonga Regional Health Alliance continues to meet monthly and continue to plan various activities. Indigo Shire is in the process of planning a hospital rally. We've seen those at Wodonga, Albury, Corryong, Corowa, and now we think it's our turn. And I know that Alpine Shire is certainly considering it for them as well. Recently at the Tri-Council meeting with Alpine, Indigo and Towong, we heard from some local doctors to Alpine and how this is impacting on them. So our concern remains at the same level. We've also had some terrible news that one of our breast cancer surgeons has been fired as a result of questioning the executive.
Oh.
So John Stutchbury, a very well-regarded surgeon, one of only two breast surgeons in our area, 27 years, very well-established, well-regarded surgeon, has been sacked. So obviously our community are reeling from that. They can't understand that. It doesn't make sense if he can provide the best care to the community, how did that happen? Surely people are allowed to question the executive. Surely that's a healthy democracy within that organisation. That has happened. And the Better Border Health group that we have in this region have certainly been advocating for the surgeon and putting the questions to Albury-Wodonga Health to say what happened and why can't we have some resolve that means that the community continues to be able to access the care and the health advice from such a well-regarded health professional in the region.
Mm. Look, from an external perspective, it doesn't appear that much is really changing, though, despite all your best efforts. I know there's a state election around the corner in Victoria, but I guess one of the tricky things here is it crosses two state jurisdictions. There's some federal involvement as well. What more do you think you can do to try and get the outcome the community's seeking for here?
So much more. And that is always the question. People always say, isn't it too late? Isn't the fight over? You seem to be getting nowhere.
Mm.
And to that, I always answer the same way. I say, well, when over 200 doctors write to the Prime Minister of Australia expressing their concern for the redevelopment, when they all supported the Greenfield site that was proposed in the 2021 Clinical Services Master Plan, when they say that the fight's not over, when they say that the current works can be used in an ongoing way without being to the detriment of a future plan, we say that we must keep fighting for that. So to that end, our next piece of work is to employ a lobbyist. And that's the beauty of this regional advocacy, Chris, is that we have amazing collaboration in our region at the moment, and a number of councils within that alliance of 13 councils, as well as the Border Medical Association and Better Border Health, are all contributing funding towards the cost of a lobbyist so that we can really consolidate our efforts and add to the capability of mayors and CEOs trying to as best they can to use their networks to get a really targeted national campaign. Because as you say, this is the only cross-border health service that provides its own challenges. We'd love to get the Victorian and the New South Wales health ministers in the room together. That seems near impossible. And that's part of what this lobbyist will do. We saw Albury Council approve their contribution on Monday night to the tune of $25,000. Indigo, Alpine, Towong, Better Border Health, Border Medical Association have all made their contributions, and we're now waiting on Federation and Wodonga councils to take that to their meetings as well. We're quite confident that the cause is so well regarded that we will see them make those commitments as well.
It must feel like there's always a different front to be fighting on. When you're talking about regional advocacy, you've had the Emergency Services Fund levy that, all councils seem to be speaking of one mind on this. Is that a fight that goes on, or is that one lost?
That one goes on, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been about our positioning now, Chris. We're obviously having discussions amongst our regional advocacy. I'm on the board of Rural Councils Victoria, who have just recently co-signed a letter with regional cities and the MAV to that effect. That advocacy does continue. We don't want a new tax to be applied without consultation with our communities. We've all had our rates notices go out. We're hearing people have those first responses to seeing that new levy on those taxes, and it's really mobilising our community. We knew that there would be that moment where there would be more of a realisation as the rates notices arrived, even though this conversation has only been to this point. So this will absolutely be an issue in the lead up to the state election. And I would say to the state government, the benefit for us of having to continue this advocacy is there's this amazing regional network at the moment that is there, poised, ready to support one another, whether it's Paw whether it's ESVF, whether it's hospital. They are adopting collective advocacy positions because they see that the need is there to raise the attention with the state government. And we know that there just aren't any Labor MPs outside of Melbourne. So we know that we're on the back foot in terms of that representation. They don't have seats in our area, certainly as far flung as we are, nearly at the border. And so we're really relying on each other and that collective advocacy to say to state government, just because we're furthest away doesn't mean we don't require any of your attention. We have people living here too who need equal parts of that state money spent in our area.
Yeah, you make a good point that it's, possibly on that basis unlikely to be felt strongly at the ballot box unless the metro areas get involved. We've seen some metro councils making statements on this. Has there been enough of that, do you think?
That's been really pleasing, and it's been such an easy thing to take to state government when sometimes they can sort of suggest to us that it's just a few of you over there somewhere. This has been a really consolidated effort between rural councils, regional councils, and metro, all in opposition. I mean, the conversation was originally around farmers and CFA, and now there's a massive conversation happening about the commercial people that have been impacted by that. So it goes on. I think that it will continue to apply pressure to the state government. We've been saying, regional premier, regional treasurer, why is this so adverse to the regions, this levy? Please tell us, help us understand. We see all the big money being spent on projects in Melbourne. Surely we're not to wear the brunt of that.
All right, we might leave it there. Thank you, Sophie. Great to chat to you as always. Best of luck with those projects that you're working on. We'll look forward to hearing some updates in the not too distant future.
Great. Thanks for having me, Chris.
So moving on, we have Tony Raunic back with us from Hunt and Hunt Lawyers this week to catch up on a couple of things and talk about a new arbiter ruling that dropped this week. But how about Sophie Price up there in Indigo? Tony, very impressive and articulate speaker, isn't she?
Haven't we got some wonderful, speakers, people who really present so well for their community, and Sophie's certainly one of those, and it just speaks so well for local government for the future that we've got so many of these excellent people coming through.
Very true. And she told me off air that she doesn't mind the fact that she's sitting back watching everyone else elect their mayor over the next 2 months or so, because she's in for a 2-year term until till around this time next year. All right, Tony, you're back because we want to touch on a few things. Last week, we spoke about the interesting decision at Frankston to extend the term of the mayor, and you just want to clarify something that we did touch on last week.
Yes, mea culpa for me, Chris and viewers. I think I described the relevant resolution to extend the mayor's term as a unanimous resolution last week. I was wrong. It's been pointed out to me that it was actually a 6-3 resolution that was passed, and there were a number of councillors spoke against. Councillor Sue Baker, thank you for pointing that out to me, one of the councillors who spoke against and voted against the resolution. So sorry, all my fault, and I didn't get my facts right on that, and I said or I misspoke, but we'll correct. Please let us know if we get it wrong, and we'll do our best to correct.
I'm sure that was just a cunning test to see whether anyone was actually listening, Tony. and the answer is yes. All right, so we'll leave that one behind. Now let's head down to Surf Coast Shire, where this week there's been the release of an arbiter's decision, which has seen a councillor suspended for 1 month. And I read through this, Tony, and one of the things that jumped out at me, curious, it's not the first time we've seen this. The arbiter in this case said there's no point asking this person to apologise or do any training because they've said they won't apologise. And there was an element of not being terribly sorry for what they'd said.
Yeah, I think the days of that will force you to make an insincere apology might be gone. But Yes, another social media comments, at least in part, an allegation arising from comments on Facebook, but also comments at a council meeting and in an email to the media. So Councillor Mike Bosworth, who is mayor down there at Surf Coast Shire, brought an application for a finding of misconduct against Councillor Paul Barker, and it relates to Aus, a gathering held on the 26th of January, so traditionally Australia Day. And the allegations were that shortly after, on the 30th of January, Councillor Barker engaged in misconduct in relation to a Facebook post when he disputed council estimates of the number of people that attended a gathering on the beach there at Torquay, the Pilk Purin truth-telling event presented by the Wadawurrung Traditional Owners Corporation on the 26th of January. And then the second element of the allegations were that on the 25th of February, Councillor Barker engaged in misconduct in relation to comments he made at a council meeting and then in an email to the media. So we had this event held at sunrise, 5:30 a.m. On the beach at Torquay. Council provided some in-kind support, and there were council officers present, and issued a council media release after the event with a photograph of the event taken some time after sunrise. And the media release included a statement that around 2,500 people gathered on Wadawurrung country at Cozy Corner Torquay today, 26 January, as the sun rose at Warnjar Sea Country. And Councillor Barker made this subsequent Facebook post on a Surf Coast community page set up by a member of the community. Importantly, the Facebook account Councillor Barker used was created by him for council-related purposes, and the account name was Councillor Paul Barker, Libertarian, Surf Coast Shire Council, so clearly identifying him as a councillor. And the post was contained a council media release and the photograph, and said, "What do you think the numbers are? Count for yourself and let me know. My count in the comments." And then in a subsequent edit to the post, added language, it's clear some people don't understand the importance of truth. The media release put out by council sets official numbers. These numbers are then used to justify the spending of your rates on this event in the future. My concern is that council is not being honest with these numbers. Can you trust them to be honest in other areas? So this post then provoked various sort of comments by other Facebook users, which were responded to by Councillor Barker. For example, you want us to count how many people attended? You right, mate? And his reply was, only if you care about the honesty of the communications that council puts out. Another one, what exactly is the point of this post? Truth. The reply, truth. Do you not care about the truth? So Councillor Barker sort of doubling down, suggesting that the estimate of numbers that had been given was untruthful. And Councillor Barker then posted in a comment section on Facebook a 7-minute video of himself counting the number of people he could see in that photograph in the media release.
That sounds engrossing. That just sounds
7 minutes.
Wouldn't
you? You wouldn't want to miss a second of that, would you?
No.
Now, there was no dispute between Councillor Bosworth, who brought the allegations, and Councillor Barker at the arbiter hearing that the attendance estimate in the media release of council was based on information that a private event management company supplied and from the council staff who assisted at the event. So it was an estimate.
So it's the actual numbers here is not what's at issue, Tony. I'm gathering it's more about the implications of why that number was provided the way it was.
Yeah. So it seems Councillor Barker took issue with the estimate and said it's an overestimate, it's not truthful, and that means you can't trust the council.
Yeah.
Councillor Bodsworth said, there's a breach of standard 4 here. Councillors have to act with integrity, exercise reasonable care and diligence, avoid action to diminish the public's trust and confidence in the integrity of local government. The allegation suggesting that council's deliberately dishonest, the accusatory in tone post would inevitably undermine the public's trust and confidence in the integrity of local government, brought discredit upon the council, sought to spread unwarranted distrust. And Councillor Bodsworth also said, look, there's a breach of standard 2, requires councillors to treat each other with dignity, fairness, objectivity, courtesy and respect, and indeed treat council staff in that way. And the attendance estimates were provided in good faith. Councillor Barker didn't actually attend the event, and challenging the estimates based upon a photograph taken sometime after the event started, so it was just a moment of the event, was unfair to the staff who made the estimate. Councillor Barker said, look, I didn't seek to single out any particular members of council staff or any other employee, but the findings were in relation to that allegation that indeed there had been a breach of the code of conduct. What the arbiter found was that Councillor Barker had taken a discrete issue, being, were the crowd attendance estimates accurate or not, and then used that as a springboard to make really broad and serious allegations about council, talking about whether council understood the importance of truth, pointedly asking, was council trustworthy in other areas? Yeah. The second allegation was upheld as well. This concerned a meeting held at council on the 25th of February, and the meeting was about Australia Day, future celebrations of Australia Day, or observing the 26th of January each year. And there were 2 petitions. There was one received in favour of council resuming funding of Australia Day activities and conducting citizenship ceremonies on the 26th of January each year. There was a second petition that was tabled, albeit late. It was out of time under the governance rules, and that was to maintain the status quo that council doesn't fund Australia Day activities and doesn't conduct citizenship ceremonies on the 26th of January. Now, Councillor Barker objected to accepting this late petition, but ultimately council resolved to consider both petitions on either side of this argument. And later that evening, Councillor Barker wrote an email to his councillor colleagues, but also to a journalist at news.com.au and another journalist at the Geelong Independent newspaper, saying, the behaviour of attendees and lack of control and poor behaviour was unacceptable tonight. I'd like to know what sort of review will occur to ensure it doesn't happen again. And the finding was that those comments that Councillor Barker made about the behaviour at the council meeting breached standard 1, an obligation for councillors to do everything necessary to ensure they perform their role and responsibilities effectively and responsibly. Breached standard 4 because it showed the councillor wasn't taking reasonable care to avoid action that would diminish the public's trust in the council, because councillors are required to act collaboratively, work constructively together. And in fact, what Councillor Barker had done, if he was concerned with the behaviour of some community members at that council meeting, he should have dealt with that, the arbiter said, through internal mechanisms at council first, rather than taken the precipitous step of immediately emailing to members of the media. So a finding of misconduct there, and as you say, the councillor has been suspended for a period of 1 month. I think the implications here are worth reflecting on, Chris. I
Yes.
think we might get caught up in, Australia Day and celebrating Australia Day, but the actual implications of this um, decision, I think, are around, councillors needing to be very cautious about using a discrete issue, a narrow issue, in this case, was the estimate of numbers attending an event on the 26th of January accurate or not, to then as a launching pad or a springboard, as the arbiter said, to making much broader allegations against council or an individual councillor, here in relation to the trustworthiness of the council or council officers. So, using some discrete issue to then, to serve as proof of some much broader allegation.
Yeah. Mm.
And secondly, councillors have to be careful that if they've got a concern about particular behaviours at a council event, a council meeting, for example, as in here, then councillors should first, at least, seek to resolve those concerns through the internal mechanisms of council and not immediately take the step of, well, I'm going to deal with this through some external release and have, deal with it in the media, on social media, etc.
Exactly. You've got to question the purpose of going straight to journalists about this. A couple of things that jumped out at me, Tony, the arbiter said that Councillor Barker defended his actions as promoting transparency, but Ms Price said, while he repeatedly stated that the public's trust in local government is deteriorating, he couldn't see any connection between his own behaviour and that supposed loss of public confidence.
Yeah, yeah. So absolutely. So I think in hindsight, if one disagreed with those attendance numbers, then by all means, one could internally say, had we come to this figure or such. But to use that as the example and saying, well, this council's untrustworthy, and repeatedly make comments sowing this seed of, can we ever trust this council, I think was absolutely inclined to bring the council into disrepute and reduce that sense of confidence in the integrity of local government. And then secondly, as you say, if you're concerned about some behaviours, work through the proper channels. It doesn't seem particularly sincere as wanting to resolve a concern if the immediate avenue one takes is to just go external to the media.
Instructive, as you say. Thank you, Tony, for your analysis of that arbiter decision, which was tabled at Surf Coast Shire's meeting this week. And interesting to note, at that same meeting, the council has reaffirmed its position in relation to January 26 and will not be holding its own events on Australia Day, as has been the case, I think, for about 5 years now, or almost 5 years. And they've also doubled down on their call on the federal government to move the date of Australia Day. So that announcement was made in the wake of this suspension as well.
So I think even in that Geelong region, I think we've got a range of approaches to Australia Day. I could be wrong here, but I think the Greater Geelong Council are celebrating and doing citizenships on the day, and just down the road at Surf Coast they're not. And I think that there's a range of approaches.
Yeah. All right. Before we let you go, there's another interesting one that's popped up this week, and this has been bubbling away for some years, in fact, Tony. The situation in Yarra City Council with the Alphington Grammar School, where that gate was put in across the access down to a major walking and cycling trail. The council's moved in during school holidays and demolished those gates to restore that access, which is a pretty big move.
It is a big move, and but I actually think it's the right move, Chris. And I think the community of Alphington will largely thank them. I've certainly imagined that the school community won't. But what we have here, and this is, as you know, as a CEO, there are often so-called, disused roads that show up on plans and such, but are owned by the council. And in this case, the road having been closed off in 2019 by the school, citing safety concerns, and because there are actually the school is divided in part between this disused road called Old Heidelberg Road. But we've had around that time the Darebin Creek Trail was completed. Now this, I don't know if you've been on this trail. I have, Chris. It's really schmick. It's for push bikes, walking. There are really clear intersection points. It cost $80 million in 2018, and there is no access directly to the Darebin Creek Trail for Alphington residents unless through this disused road. So in 2022, as you say, the part of the pedestrian gate was removed to allow walkers access, but last Saturday the entire barrier's been removed. The council are putting in a pedestrian crossing for school students, between the two parts of the school across the Old Heidelberg Road. And I believe there's to be an upgraded sort of path to the Darebin Creek Trail for Alphington residents, all at a cost of $400,000. The Mayor, Stephen Jolly, has been pretty firm on this, and it seems that the community are very supportive. 270 submissions to a council consultation process in favour of reopening the road. However, the school community, the mayor, the principal, of course, Vivian Niku, has said, "Look, we've lost this battle, but we're still fighting the war for the school to exercise its rights. What they argue are its rights to enclose this space." I would say, as a minimum, if that was to occur, the school should pay a fair market value for the public land. But given the public demand for access, it's not right for the principal to say that the road's only useful to the school. That's her reported comments, and I think that's apparent that's not the case.
I wouldn't have thought so. So Stephen Jolly says it's over. The principal says we're still looking at our options. Do you think the council's on safe legal footing here? I mean, it's taken a long time to get to this point. There must be a reason for that.
Yeah, I do. Look, I don't know all the ins and outs, but one thing, my point I would make is that it's very difficult these days to obtain adverse possession against a public entity like a council. It used to be the case that one might enclose some parkland, or as you might say here, a disused road, but that's very difficult to do under some statutory reforms that occurred quite some years ago. No doubt the school will take their own legal advice here, but I think that Yarra City Council are on have made the popular move here.
All right, enlightening. Thank you, Tony. I don't think we expected you back so soon, but there's been a bit happening this week, so I'm not going to make any predictions about when you might next pop up to give us your legal eagle insights. Thank you for that, and we'll hopefully talk to you very soon.
Good stuff. Enjoy the footy, viewers.
Indeed. Tony Raunic from Hunt & Hunt Lawyers with us here on VLGA Connect. That's just about it for VLGA Connect this week. Just to remind you that the councillor census is coming, the second iteration of the VLGA's annual census, which is all part of the VLGA's commitment to supporting councillors on the journey to be successful community representatives. All councillors will receive the census on the 6th of October and will have until the end of the month to complete. All responses will be fully confidential. This is your chance to have your voice heard as a councillor and inform the debate and discussions about the sector with other tiers of government and across the local government sector in the state. Look out for that on the 6th of October, and on a future edition of VLGA Connect, we'll tell you a lot more about that census. Don't forget to keep up to date with the latest news from not just Victoria, but around the nation and from overseas in the Local Government News Roundup, which is sponsored by the VLGA. That comes your way as a podcast every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. That's it for this week's edition of VLGA Connect. Thanks so much for watching and listening. We'll be back with you again very soon. I want to thank Hunt & Hunt Lawyers, our sponsors. Until next week, bye for now.